Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Leach for NCR, and this is Soul Seeing for Lent, sponsored by Franciscan Media, a wonderful, wonderful company, and I'll tell you more about them in a special offer at the end. Meanwhile, the reason you all tuned in is the beautiful collection of pixels on my right, Sister Joan Chittister. Hi, Joan.
Hi, Mike. Good to see you again, always.
It's always good to see you. I got to tell you, I love you, Joan.
Yeah, I know that. We go way back, Michael. We've got more memories than most historians have.
I know, and I look at you and I see all those memories, Joan, and I feel very good. Now, Joan, by way of introduction, I have a surprise. See, I could introduce you as a legend in your own time and as one of the most prophetic voices in the church, as a heroic champion of women's rights, a proponent of peace and justice, and your body of work is going to last a lot longer than my grandchildren. And so I've got a surprise. Sen, can you bring in the surprise? And I'm going to bring in the surprise by way of introducing you to who you really are to all the people.
Oh, isn't this? Oh, my darling.
It's Sister Joan.
How good to see you, Vicky. You
It's Sister Chittister. Yeah. She's happy to see you.
Vicky,
Yeah.
I can't believe that I'm getting a chance to say hello to you. I think about you so often over the years.
Now,
You're a strong woman, Vicky, and a beautiful one.
she said, yeah, she heard you, Joan. Now, I want to tell the audience, because Heidi Schwump told me more people are going to look at this interview than saw the Grammys the other night, okay?
Yeah.
So this is who Joan, Sister Joan, really is. About 17 years ago, Joan, you'll remember this. I want to share it with everybody. Joan received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Catholic Reporter at a hotel. And when it was over, she invited about 20 to 25 close friends. She has 1 million close friends up to her hotel room for pizza and beer. You will recall. So we all went up there. Joan was laying back in her bed, sitting up. On the other bed, I think, was Sister Teresa Kane.
Might have been. I think it was that night. Yeah.
There was a who's who of Catholicism all around the beds, and you were there, and everybody wanted your attention because you had received the award, and everybody adores you. Tom Roberts and I ordered beer and pizza. You promised beer and pizza. We paid for it. And the point I'm trying to make is everybody, it was great conversations, but everybody wanted your attention. And do you remember who you focused your attention on?
You bet I do. I knew right away. I knew something was struggling, and I knew something was beautiful, didn't I, Vicky? And you and I began a great conversation that we have yet to finish. I don't want to see that conversation end ever.
She understood you. She went,
She understands. She understands very well.
Vicky's had Alzheimer's for about 20 years now. She was diagnosed in 2003. And she was about 4 years in at that night. And I will never forget it, Joan. That's right. Sister Joan. Yeah, she knows who you are. And
Vicky knew that my mother was an early onset Alzheimer's victim, 28 years. 28 years she lived with it, and she was like you, Vicky, strong and never petulant, just kind. And that's who you are. I saw it right away.
Vicky appreciates that. You know, you remind me in a way, there was an old radio play you might remember, Joan, called Boston Blackie. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
He was a detective in Boston, and he was called the friend of those who have no friend. And in your whole life in ministry, you have been the friend of those who don't get attention. You've been the friend of those on the margins. There was a period when the Vatican tried to silence you for what you were proposing the church do. And they tried to silence you. And 20 years later, they were doing the same thing that you wanted them to do.
Of course. We hang a little behind the history sometimes in the church. And I understand why we do it, because real change comes from the bottom up, not from the top down. So sometimes you have to wait longer for people to understand the grace in it. At the same time, it's hardest on those who hurt for the coming of it. So it's people like you, people like my mother, who taught me patience and kindness and presence, Vicki. And you're still very valuable to, certainly to Tom. He'd be a running Irishman, you know it, if it weren't for you, Vicki. We'd never keep a hold of that man's feet. But where you are, he is. And it's beautiful.
She loves you. So now you're going to say, come on in. Vicki's going to go. And this is her best friend, Cynthia.
Hi.
That's Sister Joan, Cynthia. They're going to go and watch another Hallmark Christmas movie while we continue the interview.
That's right.
Okay, Joan, I had to do that because I want people to know who you really are.
Oh, no, she is beautiful, Mike. She really is. You can just feel the serenity in her, and what she's been through. How they do it, I don't know. But
the name of the show is Soul Seeing, and it's based on a column that I shepherd called Soul Seeing. And Soul Seeing is what you do. You see with the eye of the soul. You look beyond appearances to the beauty and the goodness that is there. And that's what you're really seeing when you look at Vicki, right?
Oh, yeah, there isn't any doubt. I know it. There's something about the Alzheimer patients. Once they're over that first terrible transition, something sets in, and they are a stolid presence, a serene presence in our midst. I saw it with my mother. I saw it for years. My mother was also very funny, incidentally, in the course of it. And what I saw there was there's something else that comes out of their personalities. There's something that brings out, and it is a lesson for us. It is not completely a loss. Oh yeah, we've lost plenty with it, but we gained some things. And I've been through some things since that I knew that my mother would just sit there and she'd go like this and she'd say, all right, all right, all right. It's all right, Joan. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
We know a little different something about life.
That's a real blessing, Joan. Well, this is Soul Seeing for Lent, so we're going to talk about Lent. We talked about Tom Roberts, who is one of the people there at the party. Tom is one of the great past editors of the National Catholic Reporter. And I would say along with Tom Fox and Bob Hoyt, probably among the greatest Catholic journalists we've ever known, wouldn't you?
Oh, there isn't any doubt. He's premier. I mean, this is a man who understands not just journalism, which incidentally is in a very hard period in our history right now, about the difference between journalism and entertainment, journalism and genuine analysis. So we're all hurting from that, trying to find journalism, and it's right here at NCR where we're walking that line between the love of the church and the hope for the church is difficult for that whole staff. And yet for years now, they've been the Catholic light in the center of the church conversation. And I'm just so proud of them. To all of you who had so much to do with building that paper and that level of journalism, and everybody knows it and is grateful. There just isn't any doubt.
And you're a big part of that, Joan, because your column is so sought after and devoured by the readers. But speaking of Tom Roberts, Joan, he sent me an email this morning to wish me good luck. He knew that you and I were going to have fun. He said, I know you and Joan are going to have fun. In thinking about her and my long road with her, it occurred to me that she's been through quite a few non-liturgical Lents in her lifetime. She's a gift to the community. Now, all your non-liturgical night, if anybody read the biography that Tom wrote,
oh yeah,
Joan Chittister, you'll know, for instance, Joan, that your father died when you were 3, and your stepfather was abusive. You got polio when you were 16, and I guess those were some of those great Lents for you, Were there greater ones later, or was that the most difficult Lent that you had to overcome?
Well, physically, it certainly was, and it takes a big chunk out of your life. You know, if you remember, we had a thing called the Sister Kenny method, and the Sister Kenny method was always relax the muscles in scalding hot water, and then exercise them in such a way that you maintain the stretch of the ligaments so that everything doesn't atrophy to such an extent that it's useless. The only problem was that after people were removed from a hospital situation, I think it was most difficult for people to continue that. I, on the contrary, remember, had just entered the monastery. I was 16 years old. I entered on September 8th. On October 15th, I was diagnosed with the polio, taken immediately to the polio hospital. And then after a lot of not just considering the implication of my coming back to the monastery, but having to negotiate how we would do it and could do it. By that time, I was in a 40-pound steel brace around my waist, all the way to my feet. And our sisters never, ever stopped the exercising. So 4 years later, a step at a time, I made it. But I made it because of this community and its tolerance for this kid, that they could have easily just sent home and said, you don't belong here. Now imagine that. Imagine what it's like to look back on that, knowing that in a sense, they would have been felt required. And as a matter of fact, as they told me later, the community itself was just terribly stricken by the whole idea. And half of the community at least said, quote, that child needs to go home. This is too hard a life for her. And the other half on record saying, she's not a child. She knows exactly what she's doing. She wants to be here, and there's no reason she can't. So it's out of that community struggle that my own struggle was abetted. And I taught double grades, 65 kids, 5th and 6th grade for 4 years, and then moved from that to high school, where they gave you a schedule, and you ran up and down the steps all day long trying to meet classes at different periods. And of course, I had a complete breakdown. That's too harsh a word. The legs wore out. The polio took me down again. So I had to go back into the braces for a while, and I moved my way out of them again. And you know, if you looked at me, you would not think that there was anything wrong. I tire easily. That's all. You're not going to find. I don't walk. Our sisters walk for miles. I don't walk, but I swim. And I do lots of other wonderful, and then I read a lot. So it was certainly a huge part of the formation of my life. Having said that, comes nowhere near to the formation that I got in my own community. Small community, wonderful community, strong community, and a very loving community. So if anything, the polio tested all of that, and this community came out with flying colors.
They're nothing like the Benedictines, you know, for devotion to others. And in your community, of which you led for many years, also supported you when you were speaking truth to power, when you were going to places like Beijing, you know, to advance the cause of women throughout the world. And the Vatican, as I mentioned earlier, thought you were talking too much. Your community supported you tremendously.
Oh, yeah, totally. And that was the amazing part of this whole process. I was actually speaking for discipleship. Now, it was meant to be at one of the early conferences for women's ordination. When they asked me to speak, I told them that I was not competent to speak about the ordination question because I didn't have that kind of classical background. And though I felt very strongly about it being a necessity if Catholic theology is going to be completely full and honest about baptism and some other things, I also knew that the woman's question was simply part of an ongoing major cultural change. It's as civic and as secular as it will ever be religious. So all of those pieces were coming together. At that same time, when they asked me to speak and I said I couldn't, they said, Joan, we know what you do. Just come and do what you do. And I said on the phone that day, I'd love to be with all of you. I know the intensity and the commitment of this group. I know that its motives are holy and that it is the beginning of the end for a paternalistic theology. I know that. I know that patriarchy is over. I know that clericalism is over. I know that the development of the both the female and the male dimension of the church is just beginning. I understand all that. And I can speak on discipleship. And that I can do with integrity, because that's the whole New Testament. So, but when Rome heard, or some people in Rome, or some of the part of a dicastery in Rome, they demanded that I not go, that I wasn't permitted to go to a woman's ordination conference. And I was thunderstruck by that. And my one answer was, nobody has the right to tell anybody what they can think about. Mm-hmm. And that if we have been given a mind and a soul, we're given questions. And until we can explore those questions, we really cannot possibly make any contribution of value to the church, let alone to women and the world. So I went.
Yeah.
And there was pressure applied, threats to the community. But when the then prioress said she would not issue a mandate, that was not her role, that this was something for the sister to discern. Mm-hmm. She asked if anybody else in the community would like to sign that letter with her, and the entire community signed that letter.
That is so powerful.
Oh, so powerful. I sat in chapel that day and watched them go down the aisle and said to myself, do you know what you're doing? Do you understand that you're putting yourself into danger? And I knew they did. They had been terribly prepared. Canonists had been in and out. Theologians had been in and out. We had all studied together well and honestly with great integrity. I begged the prioress to give the mandate. I said, don't worry about me. I'll be all right. I'll be all right. Just, I don't want you or the community to suffer. Mm-hmm. And she and the community said, in essence, not on your life. You are not going through this alone. We're going with you. We're a community. And you're not doing anything wrong. Yeah. You're not doing anything wrong. You're right about having the right and the responsibility to think your way back through your baptismal promises and what they mean to your own participation in the development of the church and its theology.
Yeah,
I learned a lot.
What a great, yeah, that's a great advertisement for living in a religious community. You know, the support and the love and the values of Jesus that are manifested to each other. You've lived your whole life in community.
That's right.
And you want us to recognize the whole widest community, that all of us are really one with each other and are meant to support each other, right?
But see, that's why we are where we are as a church. Because Catholics do not see themselves as churchgoers. They see themselves as Catholics, as the owners of the church, as the blood membership of that church. So it isn't just a matter of stopping by for Mass. It has something to do with owning the face of the church. It's like the Pasch. It's like Easter. It's a church that says, no, the resurrection is not completely finished. Yes, Jesus is with us, but not in the fullness yet. Therefore, we, as a Catholic community, must, if we're really going to celebrate Easter and live Lent, we must see ourselves as the presence of Jesus here and now until, in the already but not yet. Mm-hmm. It's in your blood. It flows through your system. Yeah. It gives you the energy, and it gives you the strength, and it gives you an awful lot of courage.
Yeah. I wrote a poem once, and the last line was, every bloodstream can be traced back to a pool of blood at the foot of the cross. Oh, and that's what you're saying, that we have this DNA that goes back to Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. Now, Joan, in your Soul Seeing article, well, see, folks, the Soul Seeing for Lent live stream is accompanied by a Soul Seeing column in the National Catholic Reporter. And Joan, you've written a beautiful one. And one of the things you say in the column is, and please talk about this, you write, this is going to be a COVID-19 kind of Lent, and that may be one of the best things that happens to our spiritual lives. How is that so?
Right. That's it. Yes, that's when I sat down, I'll be honest with you, that week, I usually just kind of burst with stuff. I have to look at this. I have to talk about that. I have to research this. I have to ask other people how they feel about that. Mm-hmm. This time I sat down to get my column, and I saw the date coming closer and closer, the due date. And I'll tell you the truth, Mike, there was no big idea pumping inside me, And mm-hmm. So I said, what are you going to do? It's such a quiet time. Mm-hmm. What are you going to talk about, even about Lent? And then I said to myself, well, you silly idiot. That is about Lent. That's the whole deal. This is a COVID-19 Lent. Meaning what? Meaning that this really brought us to the atmosphere that the sisters told me in second grade you were supposed to have during Lent. You should take a little extra space and pray and read a little bit. And you should take some time, that you do something that is special spiritually. And you should think a lot about, how are you doing with your relationship with Jesus? And then finally, you should reflect on all of it and say, when this is over, who will I be? What's left that I have to uncover again, that I've been forgetting, that I've kind of just ritualized, but didn't really sit down and think about. And then all of a sudden I said to myself, Joan, this is right. This is the kind of Lent they always wanted us to have. Read a little more, rest a little more, talk a little more to people, add something to your life, take something away from your life. Just know that you're in charge and you're going down a good road. And I sat back in my chair and I said, Joan, who's going to believe that? Everybody is so sick and tired of this COVID thing, and it has affected their life so much. And then I heard the lady that I quote in the column, I heard her say to somebody else, you know what? I hate to admit this, but I'm gonna miss these long, quiet, slow days when this is over. And I said to myself, and missing the long, quiet, slow days is exactly what our soul needs. Our soul is saying to us, I haven't been fed much by you lately. All I know about is your schedule and your work. You haven't said much to me about your heart or your mind or your sense of family or your concern for even the nature of the country. Maybe you need to sit down and look at the life of Jesus again and ask what parts of it are most important now and what parts of it might be missing in your life. And all of a sudden, I had myself a tiny little Lenten retreat that didn't take any soul knotting at all. It was so natural and normal and took me back through the years of a different kind of Lent. Grade school, high school, even college, where everybody stopped in the chapel on the way home and just sat there for 20 minutes. Why? Because it was Lent. We didn't know why else we were there. It was Lent. It stopped us. COVID has stopped us. It has made us look, for instance, at our limitations, at what we're not able. We think we're so smart and so strong. And yet there's so much in our own personal lives, let alone the life of this country, that we are not able to touch. We can only live through them. We get a sense of patience from COVID. Isn't it funny? You may want the vaccine, honey, but it's not here yet. Now it's coming. Be patient. Be patient. Or you certainly get an idea of nowness, of being in the moment, because that's all you have. You can't plan for tonight. You can't plan for the trip to grandma's. You can't plan for the new job. You can't do anything but deal with now. And all of a sudden, there's a whole new way of seeing life. Everybody isn't coming in and you are not going out. We're going to sit, you and I, tonight. You and I, Mike, we haven't had the chance to talk for months.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that. So I found myself in a very, very happy spot saying, I'm glad I had to write that column for NCR. I don't know that I would have thought about it otherwise.
That's great. Okay, that's so beautiful, Joan. I'm seeing two things. We have dozens and dozens of comments coming in from all over the place. And I'm looking at two things. I'm looking at a sentence I put on my wall here that you wrote in the column that says, Lent is not about giving up our adult candy or immersing ourselves in pain. It is time to renew the best in us. And there's a comment on another side or shadow of Lent from Mr. Anthony George, Joan, and he says, Lent is for prayer and also fasting. It is imperative that fasting is central, and on this Islam can teach us so much. Real fasting is not just giving up little things. The cross is not for wimps. We must take the road to Calvary silently. What kind of fasting do you think that we should be interested in?
Well, I think you have to be worried. You have to get a little nervous about that sentence. It's heartfelt and it's right and it's good. But Lent was never meant to lead us to any kind of excessive asceticism. The function of fasting is to teach myself that I can say no to myself. I can say no to my greed. I can say no to my pride. I can say no to my lust. I can say no to my sloth. Fasting says, understand that if you are able to control what sustains you physically, then you are called to turn that into what sustains you spiritually. So I never like to, Lent is not about suffering. Suffering itself is not a punishment. It's a result of something else. So it is learning to suffer without falling apart. that is the spiritual. It's the spiritual link that brings us to the best of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, Joan. Are you still with me, Joan? Your face is frozen.
That
Joan,
I
are you still
reminds me that I am capable to say myself.
no to myself? Yeah, that's beautiful, Joan. Yeah, suffering. There's a way that suffering brings us back to God because we're out on the limb of a tree, and suffering is kind of a cause of our thoughts and our actions, but it leads us back to God also, doesn't it?
Well, of course, I mean, when we refuse to suffer, and some people do, they can feed it with all sorts of other um, candied rewards.
Mm-hmm.
But when we refuse to suffer, we're refusing to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Suffering is always a call to growth. And you know it. And you said to your kids when they were little, I know that the tooth hurts and the dentist is going to take it out, and you're going to be very brave about it. And then you're going to understand what some other kids might not, that you shouldn't be eating all that candy. Suffering is not a punishment; it's a result,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something we do to condition ourselves to control ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds us that to grow is going to take some effort.
Yeah, we have a note from Ellen Knight who says, "To me, everyone has the same amount of suffering, just at different times and in different places. It's a call to grow in the Lord." And that's what you're saying we should do this Lent, is use whatever is before us and within us to take the time out of time to get closer to the Lord.
That's right. That's
And
exactly.
de facto, God is closer to us
Yeah.
than breathing, and
Yeah.
nearer than hands and feet, as another poet. Joan, you're not going to believe this, but we're out of time. But that being said,
I'm not going to believe it.
I know it's like 2 minutes. That being said, and all these things coming from all over the world, I guess you can see them later, Joan. Stephanie Yeagle of NCR said I could have an extra 5 minutes if we're going to town, which I knew we would. And so I want to ask one, and the thing is, you're not prepared for any of these questions, because when I called you last week and I said, hey, Joan, do you want me to call you the day before and I can give you some sample questions so you'll be prepared? Do you remember what you said?
I know what I always say. I have never answered a canned question in my life, and I'm not starting now.
No canned questions today. You didn't know what was coming,
No.
including Vicky, and you don't know what's coming now. And I've got a last question I saved for you because
Okay.
it's a question that I ask myself all the time. So I assume that all the folks out there are also interested.
Yeah.
One of our sons was suffering when he was in college from this and that, like all young people suffer. And we talked and we came to the realization together that the most important thing we can have in ourselves is peace. And I just finished a book called The Way of Peace, based on the premise that we can't have peace in the world unless we first have peace in our heart. Now, everybody hungers after peace. Based on your good long life and experience with others, what can you tell us about cultivating peace in ourselves?
Well, the first thing I would want to tell anybody is do not mix up peace with painlessness. And don't think that painlessness is the sign that you're peaceful. There are a lot of people in pain today from some reason. Their hearts are broken. They're worried about their own mental health. The arthritis is killing them. The pain is there. And yet they'll be among the most peaceful people you know. So what does that mean? It means I am me. This is what's happening to me. I can handle this. I have so much to be thankful for, so much that's good for me. That nurse that will be in at 2 o'clock this afternoon to do that massage on my knees, she's a gift. I have so many gifts that I burst in gratitude for them. I'm more than capable of growing through them to the peace that no one can take away. That's the peace that Jesus is offering you. My peace I give to you. And you will know when you get to that peace that what you are being asked to deal with, you will not only be able to deal with, you will grow from it, and those around you will grow from watching you. So peace and pain are not synonyms. Peace is the ability to deal with what life has given me so that I can learn more about the presence of God in my heart and in my relationships with other people. It is there. It does come. It's part of the serenity of age, and it is certainly part of the honesty of the person who says, the pain is killing me, but I've been given so many good things. I can handle this. I can handle this. And I will.
Thank you, Joan. That is so beautiful. I wish we had more time. All these comments are so wonderful. One person asked, who's the author of The Way of Peace? That's me. And the book's coming out, I think, in May. And there's one pass because they're going down from a gentleman, Pierre, I think, in Montreal. He said a wonderful thing. I love everything Joan says. And he says, and I'm a man. He said, I'm not a woman, and I'm really getting something out of this. And
it might be because we're both human. That may be the only thing we have in common, but it works.
Yeah. Joan, thank you for being a friend for decades.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's just this opportunity to see you like this after all these years. That was the gift I knew I'd have today. Mike and I, we're going to have a good conversation. God bless you.
I wish we could have beer and pizza. And I'm going to end it, Joan. I'm going to end it, Joan, by thanking you with all my heart, and by thanking Stephanie Yeagle and Brittany Wilms from the NCR behind the scenes who make this possible. Bill Mitchell, the publisher of National Catholic Reporter, and Heidi Schlump, our good friend, the editor.
Yes.
And most of all, I want to thank Franciscan Media, who sponsors this. You know Franciscan Media. And here's a special offer. Visit their website. It's franciscanmedia.org. They have meditations, they have prayers, they have books, they have the Saint of the Day. It's a great website, and their mission is to share the love of God in the spirit of St. Francis, another great saint like St. Benedict. And go to their website, and you will get 20% off of Joan's books with this discount code, Joan Chittister, NCR. Live in love, grow in faith, soul seeing, see with your soul. Bye, Joan.
Goodbye, Mike. God bless all of you. Thank you for being there.